Hello, everyone. I'm Jess. And today we're going to talk about dropping a foot in China. I'll let y'all finish the rest of the sentence. And to anyone who just so happens to be Chinese who hears this message, 你好,好不好?我很好。对于中文，还认美国人，我们翻译，我们翻译，我们翻译。Quick translation for the brothers and sisters out there. Hello, how are you? I am very well. For the Chinese, Black Americans, we fight back. We fight back, we fight back. 我们翻译，我们翻译. And so in the spirit of us fighting back, let me just say this. Most of us have heard about the attacks on Africans/Black people because they are not making a distinction, have been taken out of their homes, kicked out on the street. And we've also heard of the Africans being targeted for testing, being forced to take these tests. They're roaming the streets. They've been kicked out of their hotels. Like, this situation is really bad. And I know, because I've seen different comments on social media and people are saying they need to fight back. When you're in a foreign country and your home country is thousands of miles away, you're in a situation where your hands are tied in terms of fighting back. You're under the control of that particular country and of that government. Oh, China, you really effed up on this one. And let me just quickly tell you how you messed up this one so bad. Because your racism against Black people is so venomous and so strong that you didn't even think about the other Asian communities. Because I can tell you right now here in America, the average American doesn't know the difference from a Chinese person to a person from Thailand to a person from Japan to a Filipino. The average American does not really know how to distinguish Chinese from a Korean. I mean, for people who do not travel internationally, it's hard to distinguish the differences between those in the Asian community. And please don't take that as an insult. Even when you go to the African continent, unless you've spent a significant amount of time in and on the African continent, it can be challenging for even Black people to be able to distinguish the difference between a Ghanaian and a Senegalese and a Nigerian, like different people from West Africa. I can tell oftentimes, and I actually get excited about guessing. I like to guess because, there are different physical traits that, different ethnicities carry that can tip you off as to what their specific ethnicity is. And for me, I enjoy guessing because it's always different and it's always a learning process. At the end of the day, all roads lead back to Africa for humanity. So to be honest and real, most people can't tell. When you start talking about Asia, particularly parts of Southeast Asia, it's hard to distinguish the difference. And so that's why I say, China, you really effed up, because when things get up and running back here in America, there are going to be people who are hesitant to do business or patronize the businesses of anybody who is of Asian descent. Then that's just a very real consequence of the actions of China. So let's talk timeline real quick. So around April 7 is when the American news cycle started reporting how the coronavirus is infecting and killing Black Americans at an alarmingly high rate. This is what started being circulated on and throughout the American news cycle. And most of you have seen the newspaper articles, the reports. You know that public health expert Dr. Anthony Fauci started speaking out and giving his feedback on why African Americans were getting the Rona at an alarmingly higher rate. He gave his interpretation on those numbers. And it's also worth noting too that someone recently told me that Dr. Anthony Fauci actually is very much well connected to Bill Gates. So you guys, you should look that up to see what that connection is. But that's a whole side note. But he started giving his whole opinion. You started seeing all of these people on your local news, I'm sure, and also on the national news talking about how African Americans are basically dying of coronavirus. That whole narrative started coming around April 7th. And then around April 11th, we started getting in all these reports and videos from China showing the Chinese racism against Black people. Even outside of the Africans, I've seen video footage of just non-Chinese. There were Jewish folks, Russian folks who were also prevented from entering some of the Chinese establishments in terms of them being able to get masks, the proper mask. There was a white guy who did a video showing how he wanted to go inside this store in China to purchase a mask, and they wouldn't let him nor a bunch of the other white people who were from other countries. They wouldn't let them in the store either. And so, you know, I know, because I know a bunch of different people from all over the world listen to, you know, different videos as they pop up in people's feed. And I have to say that because yes, there are non-Black people who are being discriminated against and who have been discriminated against in China as well. However, when it comes to the Africans, specifically Black people in general, they are getting discriminated against to the largest and fullest extent. We know it's racist, so we don't have to debate that. And there have been African leaders here and there who have spoken out against this issue. So to the African brothers and sisters, the brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, your role is very simple. Either kick them out of your country or give them hell if they stay. And what does hell if they stay look like? It looks like what they're doing to the brothers and sisters in China right now. That's what it looks like. To the Brazilian brothers and sisters, and that's a whole nother situation, because even with the Brazilian brothers and sisters, your job is the same. China and Brazil are supposedly allies, but China is very ticked off with Brazil right now, and they're calling Brazil racist because one of the Brazilian ministers, his name is Abraham Weintraub, he insinuated this whole virus 19 is part of China's plan for world domination, and they're calling him all kinds of racist, and they want an explanation from the Brazilians. So Brazilians, you don't owe them a single explanation, because the last time I checked, over 55% of Brazil is of African descent. And I say over 55% because 55% is just what they will acknowledge. There is a reason why we go to Brazil, and it's not just a party and kick it. So we're all in this thing together. I guarantee the white countries are going to have a consequence for their fellow countrymen being in China, being treated like ish. There will be specific consequences. Now, it might be public, it may not be public, but they're not going to let the Irish or the Jewish or the Russian be in China cast out on the streets, and they're not going to have some type of accountability for those Chinese who are in their country. They're going to have a consequence, or they're going to implement some kind of policy that's going to make it difficult for them to even enter the country. China has shown their racism and their disrespect for the rest of the world, and that is very clear. But for those of us here in America, here's where we get involved, because today is April 14th, and everybody has a part to play in this whole historical narrative that is in the making at the current moment. And so this is where we as Black people come in, because someone took a picture of the notification that was placed in the McDonald's in China. And you could see it on your screen. That's the notification that was placed. What we know is McDonald's are independently owned around here in the United States and also around the world due to it being a franchise. And we also know McDonald's are largely situated in Black neighborhoods here in America. They are in other neighborhoods as well, but they're heavily situated in Black neighborhoods. And yes, they do employ a lot of Black people, but sometimes there are unintended consequences and casualties in every war. And let's be very clear, the acts of China are acts that are very much warlike. It's almost as if they have waged war. An economic war, a biological war. I mean, this is what it looks like on the outside looking in. Now, is that true? Hey, that's up for people to interpret. So as African Americans, here's where we come in. We have to start paying closer attention to what we're buying and where it's coming from. For example, in 2013, Smithfield Foods was bought by Shumway Group, also known as the WH Group, also known as Shumway Group. They are the largest meat producer in China, and they announced the purchase of Smithfield Foods back in 2013, and they purchased it for $4.72 billion. That purchase of Smithfield's made the Shumway Group one of the largest overseas owners of American farmland. And they produce a number of different meat-related products. So a lot of your breakfast sausages and hams and sandwich meat and pork type products are owned by the Chinese firm Shumway Group. You can look at the screen and see all of these are Smithfield products. And what is significant to us is there's an article, and I'll include it in the description box, that says Smithfield Foods closes one of the nation's largest pork plants as worker COVID-19 cases spike. And there was something crazy like close to 300 workers who were said to have COVID-19 or something like that. So you should check that out. Our part is we need to be very thoughtful about what we're buying and where it's coming from, especially when it comes to the foods that we eat, especially when it comes to the products and the merchandise that we purchase, because this thing with China is actually getting very ugly, but we need to stay prepared. Now in China, there is a city called Guangzhou, and this city has the largest Black population. Folks estimate it to be roughly about 320,000 African people who are coming back and forth to work in China. One of the city's McDonald's location decides to do a posting basically saying that no Black people could enter into the restaurant. And I'm also hearing that there are other restaurants that are preventing and forbidding Black people from coming into their restaurants. So basically now they're trying to starve the Black people out. They don't want them in the lodging facilities. They want them out on the street. They don't want them in the restaurant. It's just a really bad situation. McDonald's apparently came out and started distancing themselves from these actions. And they did so within good reason, because despite what the Chinese may know, McDonald's are largely parked and situated in our neighborhoods and in our communities. And you have McDonald's all over the continent of Africa. And so you definitely don't want to be associated with actions like that, because that affects your bottom line. And they've already reported that the sales at McDonald's restaurants has plunged more than 22% in March and nearly 35% internationally. So people already aren't going to McDonald's like they once were. And to have something like this that be directed towards Black people is just unacceptable. So they definitely distanced themselves from those comments. McDonald's China apologized for banning Black people from that particular store, and that store is closed. For how long, I don't know, and they really haven't said, but McDonald's has issued a public apology for those actions. And I always tell people this, having spent more than half my life traveling around the world, no matter where in the world you go, you are viewed as Black first. Black first. Your race comes first. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, your race comes first. And then they ask you, where are you from? That's what it is. Those of you who are out there, because I know I always get people who disagree with me, we can argue it out in the comments section of the video. If you look at this posting that was placed in the McDonald's, it says Black people. It does not say Africans. It says Black people. And this is some stuff that Black Americans, many of our ancestors, dealt with back in the day. And to be honest, I don't know why. I just don't know why, after experiencing this, China would be at the top of your priority list to visit. Very far back, I remember wanting to go to China. I studied the Chinese language for 4 years when I was at university. And so, you know, obviously in doing that, you study China. It wasn't at the top of my priority list to visit China until recently, due to business connections. That was really the only reason why it rose to the top of the list. And I was doing some work with the Chinese, a couple different Chinese entities for products that I'm actually working on releasing. And so all of that has come to a halt as well. And these are products that are, just so you know, these products that I was working to release are outside of Black Travelers Network. So it's not like there was anything that I was doing that was Black Travelers Network related. I do other things outside of Black Travelers Network. And so, yeah, I just thought that this would be an important message for you. I encourage you to share with your folks. I'm saying we just need to just straight up and down drop a foot in a you know what by paying closer attention to where our food and products come from and making purchasing decisions based off of that information. I'm so excited. We're days away from releasing a whole new product line. This is something that's going to help a lot of people inside Black Travelers Network, people outside Black Travelers Network. It does not matter whether you're a part of BTN or you're not. Those product details will be coming soon. And if you like this video, click the thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Again, until next time, take care.